Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to this week's post-cabinet media conference. As you can see from our perspective, we have a full house here today. I have the acting Prime Minister, Minister Imbert. I have the Minister of Housing, Minister Dillon, the Minister of Works and Transport, Minister Sinanan. And we'll start with Minister Sinanan.
Thank you, Minister Young. I would like to report on 3 areas this afternoon. First one will be the oil spill that occurred on Tuesday evening in the vicinity of the Maritime Preservation. At this point in time, the source of the oil spill would not have been found. However, the EMA, the Ministry of Energy, and Maritime Services were in contact with the IMA, and they are conducting samples of vessels in the area. They have collected samples from the oil spill, as well as they are taking samples from all the vessels in the area. At this point in time, the origin have not been able to ascertain the source of the oil spill. However, they are pursuing all avenues to ensure that the vessel that the oil would have spilled from will be held accountable. Secondly, I'd like to report on the prohibition notice that the Civil Aviation Authority would have issued yesterday evening. We all know what is happening with the 737 aircrafts, MAX aircraft 8 and 9, and based on the last information from the American Civil Aviation Authority, the Trinidad and Tobago Civil Aviation Authority had decided to issue the prohibition notice yesterday evening. What that meant is that that aircraft would not be allowed to either land or take off from Piccadilly or Crown Point in Tobago, or through the airspace. The fact that the origin state, the design state, would have issued a prohibition notice, what that simply meant is that all the aircrafts would have been grounded wherever they are. However, even when they withdraw that notice, the airlines will have to submit to the Civil Aviation in Trinidad and Tobago all the relevant permissions and information before they are allowed to enter our airspace for whatever purpose. So the Civil Aviation is monitoring the situation as we go forward, but we all recognize this is a very dynamic situation, and from time to time, based on the information coming forward, they may have different ways of taking certain actions. I also want to give the population information that we are working with the American Airlines, who are the carrier that would have been affected by this decision. They normally operate 3 flights in and out of Piccadilly every day. They have assured us that they are using another aircraft to minimize the inconvenience to their passengers. Most of their passengers yesterday and today who would have been put in a position where they could not have either leave Trinidad or arrive into Piccadilly would have been accommodated by Caribbean Airlines and some of the other carriers, JetBlue, United. American Airlines have confirmed to us this morning that they are going to operate 2 flights today and tomorrow, and their service should come back to normal by Sunday. So that is an update as to the airline travel in and out of Piccadilly by the 737 aircrafts that were put on the prohibition notice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Sinanan. And now I'll ask Minister Dillon to address us.
Thank you very much. Pleasant good afternoon, members of the media and the listening public of Trinidad and Tobago. It is my distinct pleasure this afternoon to inform the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago that Cabinet has approved Phase 1 of the Piccadilly regeneration project. This is part of a wider project. The government having recognized that there is a need to do something in East Port of Spain, in fact, to do something in the city of Port of Spain, which has experienced decline, urban decline, unemployment, and other things that plagues our society. The government has decided that there must be some measures to increase the East Port of Spain division, East Port of Spain area, in particular, the Piccadilly Street. Cabinet has approved the regeneration of Piccadilly Street. This project involves the geographic area stretching from Besson Street to Jackson Hill. It in fact entails two phases. Phase 1 entails looking at the area from Besson Street to Laventille Road, and phase 2 involves from Laventille Road to Jackson Hill. One of the reasons that the government has decided that, because you understand that Piccadilly Street is in fact a major egress coming out of Port of Spain. It also is the borders with the South Port of Spain and East Port of Spain. It's a very important area that must be concentrated on insofar as development is concerned. The first phase of that project entails the demolition of the Besson Street Police Station, the old Besson Street Police Station, I'm reminded, the old Besson Street Police Station, and involve that block from that Besson Street Police Station to Laventille Road. The intention there is to put on a mixed-use tower building on that site. That's the first phase. That would involve a combination of economic activities, social activities, and of course residential activities in that particular area. Now, if you know the area quite well, there are also some very important heritage buildings there, the lodge area, there's some schools, and so on. So those would also be incorporated in the development. There's not a plan to demolish those. They will be incorporated in development. The Urban Development Company of Trinidad and Tobago has been tasked to do the modified design build concept, and now is a conceptual stage insofar as treating where that area is concerned. But I want to emphasize that the government having recognized that there's a need to generate both employment, both in terms of lifting the East Port of Spain area, have given this project a priority. And so it's well on its way in terms of phase 1, the demolition, which would start before the end of this month. It is planned to start the demolition of the old Besson Street Police Station, which will give way to that mixed-use tower building I mentioned a while ago. During that phase, of course, we know that it will generate employment within those areas, because we intend, as far as possible, to utilize people within the area as far as creating employment is concerned. At the end of the project, it certainly will create a certain kind of space for further employment, for further development for the areas in concern. I can also mention the intention with the mixed-use tower building involves both economic activities for the residents themselves on the ground floor, recreational space on the second floor, and of course residential 2-bedroom and 3-bedrooms on the other floors of those buildings. And that's all part of what we call regenerating East Port of Spain. It's a wider plan of the city of Port of Spain that the government decided that we will start at the Piccadilly Street area, the East Port of Spain, which we know is the major egress out of the city of Port of Spain. And this is a project handled by the Office of the Prime Minister and the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development.
Thank you very much, Minister Dillon. Acting Prime Minister, Minister Imbut.
Thank you very much, Minister Young. First thing I'd like to report is the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister, will be returning to Trinidad and Tobago on Tuesday evening via Caribbean Airlines flight out of New York. I am advised by the Honorable Prime Minister that his test procedures went very well. The Facebook posting that was reported in a daily newspaper was accurate. The Prime Minister does not require surgery, and we are thankful. Our prayers have been answered, and we look forward to his return on Tuesday. I just got a little update that he is doing very well. He just did a stress test and has all the characteristics of a young person. That's what I'm told. So that is very good news for us. Our prayers have been answered. I'd also like to clarify some issues with respect to Caribbean Airlines and its aircraft, and I'll answer any questions afterwards on this matter. I want to reiterate for the benefit of the watching public that at this time, Caribbean Airlines has a fleet of 12 Boeing 737-800 aircraft. Coincidentally, that's the same aircraft that American Airlines has replaced its MAX 8 aircraft with. The aircraft coming into Trinidad and Tobago today on American Airlines, used by American Airlines, is the Boeing 737-800, one of the safest aircrafts in the world. So Caribbean Airlines has a fleet of 12 737-800s. It does not have any MAX 8 aircraft. And while it has placed an order for MAX 8 aircraft, it is, of course, being a responsible state enterprise, and we as a responsible government are looking at our options with respect to that order of aircraft. The first aircraft was due to be delivered and put into use in December of this year, 9 months from now. But let me just give you some history with respect to the Federal Aviation Administration, because it's very important that people know what the facts are, as opposed to wild speculation. The FAA, if you go on their website and you put into the search terms on the FAA website, Boeing 737 MAX, you will get a link to a page that says FAA statement on Boeing 737 MAX. And what this page will give you is the various FAA statements on the Boeing 737 MAX, or MAX 8 as it is called. And on the 11th of March, which I believe was Monday, am I correct? At 6 p.m., the Federal Aviation Administration of the United States issued what is called a continued airworthiness notification with respect to the Boeing 737-8 and the Boeing 737-9, both known together as the 737 MAX fleet. So at 6 p.m. on Monday, the 11th of March, the FAA issued a continued airworthiness notification with respect to the MAX 8 and MAX 9. At 6:10 p.m. the following day, this is March the 12th, this would be Tuesday, the FAA administrator, Mr. Daniel Elwell, issued another statement. And this statement said, the FAA continues to review extensively all available data and aggregate safety performance from operators and pilots of the Boeing 737 MAX. Thus far, this is at 6:10 p.m. on Tuesday, the 12th of March, and this is coming from the FAA administrator in the United States. Thus far, our reviews show no systemic performance issues and provides no basis to order grounding the aircraft. Nor have other civil aviation authorities provided data to us that would warrant action in the course of our urgent review of data on the Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crash. That's at 6:10 p.m. on Tuesday, the 12th of March, official statement from the Federal Aviation Administration of the United States. Then yesterday at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, the FAA issued a statement stating that they had ordered the temporary grounding of Boeing 737 MAX aircraft because of data gathered and new evidence collected at the crash site and analyzed today. That was yesterday. So at 3 p.m. yesterday, the FAA, in its continuing responsibility to update the traveling public in the United States and the world, they had a continuous thread from Monday to Tuesday into Wednesday. On Monday and Tuesday, they said that as far as they were concerned, there was no reason to ground the aircraft. On Wednesday, yesterday at 3, they said because of new evidence collected at the crash site, they decided to temporarily ground the aircraft. The result of that order from the Federal Aviation Administration of the United States at 3 p.m. yesterday was that American Airlines was unable to operate the MAX 8 for us into Port of Spain. In fact, I was told that an American Airlines aircraft had in fact taken off from Miami on its way to Trinidad and Tobago and had to turn back because it would have left before the 3 p.m. notice came out from the Federal Aviation Administration. And there was an American Airlines plane here that I'm told had to remain. And since then, American Airlines has very quickly, I want to compliment them. They're not a Trinidad airline. We can't tell them what to do. But clearly, they value the Trinidad business and the Trinidad leg of their flight operations. They very quickly substituted an aircraft. They're now using the same aircraft that Caribbean Airlines has, the 737-800. I would also want to say that I've instructed Caribbean Airlines to look at the contract that they have with the leasing companies. Now, Caribbean Airlines, let me clarify another misconception, is not buying any planes. Caribbean Airlines, for a very long time, has not purchased planes. In fact, the last purchase of planes was the ATR under the former UNC administration. But in terms of jet aircraft, Caribbean Airlines has not purchased a jet aircraft for its predecessor, BWI, for a very, very long time. These companies, these airlines, find it far more profitable to lease aircraft from an aircraft leasing company. So that, as has been the practice in the past, Caribbean Airlines entered into an arrangement to lease MAX 8, not to buy them. And the first aircraft was due to arrive at the end of this year. The airline has been instructed by me as Corporation Sole to review the contract to get international assistance from aviation experts, particularly attorneys and lawyers who are very specialized in the field of aviation law. Take a look at that contract and see what are the conditions. One of the obvious conditions would be that the aircraft must be certified and fit for purpose. And in the current situation with the FAA grounding the aircraft and Caribbean Airlines flying a north-south route from Port of Spain going north up to continental United States, clearly these aircraft would not be fit for purpose today. We do not know what it will be like in December. But so Caribbean Airlines has been authorized and instructed by me to get the best legal advice in the world with respect to these leases, and also to put contingency arrangements in place with the aircraft leasing companies with respect to alternative aircraft in the event that, as we get closer to December, the FAA decides that there is a permanent problem with the MAX 8. You must realize this is temporary grounding. Of course, you have the psychological issue as well with respect to the aircraft, even if the FAA came out and said it's a good aircraft. So I've asked Caribbean Airlines to examine all of the options and make sure that at the end of the day, whatever happens, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, the traveling public, will be protected.
Thank you very much. There's one announcement from National Security, and it takes us over to the sister isle, Tobago. You may have seen in the last 24 hours certain persons trying to create a narrative with respect to the hiring of recruits in Tobago in the fire service. I first became aware of potential issues surrounding this just after opening the Shervan police station earlier this week. What it is that Tobago have dedicated, thank you to the THA for dedicating facilities in Argyle for the training of a batch of fire officers. So they were taking on 50 recruits. And there was initially some talk about all of the recruits not coming from Tobago. I immediately got in touch with our acting chief fire officer, Mr. Gopal, and over the past 24 hours, we've worked things out. So I'm happy to see here today that all 50 recruits going into this batch of recruitment in Tobago will come from Tobago, because certain persons had received letters of offering for them to come training, and when they arrived for orientation, they were told they'd no longer be absorbed into this batch, and that had created some level of disconcertment, as you would expect. That has now been resolved. The full batch of 50 persons who are being recruited in Tobago will be taken in Tobago. There are 15 extra fire officers who are going from Trinidad, to training in Tobago. They will now be absorbed in Trinidad. So the full batch of recruits in Tobago will be Tobagonians, that is 50, and going forward, we will continue to try and maintain this system, and hopefully as we open the fire stations in Tobago, there will be more employment. What I'm going to put on the table at this stage is for those recruits who are being trained in Tobago, understand that at the end of the training, once you're successful, there may not be 50 job positions for fire officers in Tobago, so some will have to work in Trinidad. But the good news is all who made the offers are now being absorbed in Tobago, so there is no issue. So I'd like to just put that to rest. At this stage, we'll take a few questions.
What I would ask Minister Sinanan has to leave for another engagement, so perhaps any questions you have for him, you could direct them to him, and then we could allow him to take his leave.
Minister, concerning the oil spill, how soon do you anticipate the origin of that spill will be determined?
Okay, the information that came to me just before the press conference is that they are targeted down to one vessel, and they are in the process now of taking samples from that vessel that they can analyze. So I'm hoping that they can have this sorted out between today and tomorrow.
Clean up, how major an issue is that?
Well, fortunately, the spill did not stay any length of time. Within 12 hours, the spill would have disappeared. So there's no oil in the area anymore. But we did have the samples taken from the water, and we're now testing all the vessels. So there's not an issue of the oil that is floating around anywhere in the vicinity anymore.
Another thing, is it that the Civil Aviation Authority now has to communicate directly with the FAA on this issue concerning vaccine?
Not necessary. What will happen is that once the American Civil Aviation, if they revisit their position and they revoke the prohibition notice, the airlines, the carriers, will have to produce documentary evidence of the airworthiness of the aircraft to our local civil aviation authority. And based on that, then we will revisit our position on the prohibition notice.
Mr. Sinanan, obviously you'd be the line minister for the TPCAA. Are you satisfied then that they weren't reactive, as many people have believed that they, given the rest of the world, besides the United States, for example, everywhere else, a lot of major jurisdictions did ground the plane out of an abundance of caution, and we didn't, and a lot of people were concerned and critical of the government.
Just let me make a point. Trinidad and Tobago cannot ground an aircraft that does not belong to it. It can simply prohibit its flying in our airspace. Just want to clear that up. What the United States can do, because American Airlines is an American carrier and it has these planes, and I think there's another airline, Southwest, I believe, has these planes, the Americans can exercise jurisdiction within continental United States and its airspace and ground aircraft within its jurisdiction. The CAA can prohibit the flying of these aircraft.
Okay. Allowing them within Trinidad and Tobago's airspace. You're fine with the timeline for that?
Again, the government is guided by the Civil Aviation Authority. That is why we have a Civil Aviation Authority in Trinidad and Tobago. And all indications are that our Civil Aviation Authority is ranked quite high on that rating. So we have had great experiences in the past with our Civil Aviation Authority, and they have never failed us. I have no proof that they have ever failed us. In this case, they looked at the information before them. They could not act on hearsay and DC. They were monitoring the situation, and once information came to them that we had to put a prohibition notice in place, they acted. Our civil aviation also controls the airspace for several regions, countries in this region. So they are quite capable of taking decisions when the appropriate time comes to take those decisions.
What time did they issue that notice?
That notice came in, I think, maybe about 6 o'clock yesterday evening. Again, we don't react to the media. We are guided by the Civil Aviation Authority. They have to review the information before them and make a decision. Once the aircraft was grounded by the United States Authority, what that simply meant, because they are the design state for the aircraft, it meant that all those aircraft, any part of the world, would have been grounded. Okay, so it wasn't 3 hours after, 4 hours. Once the Americans took that decision, because they are the design state for the aircraft, wherever that aircraft was in any part of the world, it had to be grounded.
And I think that's a very important point. Since the aircraft is manufactured in the United States, And as Minister Sidanan has pointed out, the U.S. is the design state. All civil aviation authorities in the world would have to follow the lead of the Federal Aviation Administration. So after the Federal Aviation Administration made a temporary prohibition order, by automatic definition, any other civil aviation authority that aircraft is entering the airspace controlled by that authority will have to take heed of the decision of the FAA, because that, as he said, is the design state or design country for that particular aircraft.
But doesn't it seem unrealistic or unreasonable to take the position that all these governments, and I will call the names, the UK, Canada, China, Singapore, India, the European Union, France, Australia, Germany, Malaysia, Ethiopia, all these governments had taken a position. And here is little Trinidad and Tobago waiting on the Trinidad and Tobago Civil Aviation Authority to tell it not to do what the entire world...
Ms. Tate, let me come in here. Governments do not control civil aviation. Civil aviation authorities do. That is a misunderstanding. In Trinidad and Tobago, the government of Trinidad and Tobago cannot instruct or direct the Civil Aviation Authority. I think I put that out in a press release today. If the government of Trinidad and Tobago, a minister, whether Prime Minister, an acting Prime Minister, or the minister in charge of the Civil Aviation Authority for that matter, were to instruct the Civil Aviation Authority to either approve or disqualify an aircraft from flying, I believe the media will be the first to say that that is political interference. In the first place, it would be unlawful for a minister to tell the independent Civil Aviation Authority of Trinidad and Tobago what to do or what not to do with respect to aircraft. And I want to make the point. Ms. Tate, I have a point to make. That is the United States system. That is really a photo op that you saw with the President of the United States. What you really saw was a photo op. If you go to the Federal Aviation Administration website, you will see the order was issued by the Federal Aviation Administration. It is not issued by the President of the United States. But be that as it may, there's a point you need to understand. I had the honor and privilege as Minister of Works and Transport in 2005 to restore Trinidad and Tobago to Category 1 status with the Federal Aviation Administration of the United States. You may recall that under the previous UNC administration, the Pandey administration, our airports and our airline had fallen into disrepute, and Trinidad and Tobago's airline and main airport was downgraded to a Category 2 status. And Caribbean Airlines, BWI at the time, was prohibited from flying into various airports in the United States because it was downgraded to Category 2 status. The view was that we did not have an independent civil aviation authority and that our aviation regulations were subject to political interference. In fact, when I was first Minister of Transport in the 1991 to 95 period, we had a civil aviation division in the Ministry of Works and Transport, which reported to me as Minister of Works and Transport. The American authorities, and in fact this is the world trend, took a very dim view of that situation, that our aviation authorities were subject to political interference. For that reason and others, Trinidad and Tobago was downgraded to Category 2 status under the UNC administration. And as I said, I had the honor and privilege in 2005, when I was reappointed Minister of Works and Transport, to participate in a ceremony with the United States Federal Aviation Administration to welcome Trinidad and Tobago back into Category 1 status, so that Piaco was upgraded to Category 1 and BWA was upgraded to Category 1. And one of the reasons was we had created a totally independent civil aviation authority, which was not subject to political interference. I take strong objection to any person, whether it's the media or otherwise, telling a minister
that he should instruct the Civil Aviation Authority with respect to airworthiness of aircraft. It's people's lives you're talking about, and that's why we have a highly skilled, professionally qualified body such as the Civil Aviation Authority, independent and free of political interference.
What you are saying is that the Civil Aviation Authority, by implication, was sleeping on the job.
Under no circumstances I say that. Please do not put words into my mouth. The Civil Aviation Authority, as the minister said, must follow the lead of the design state. You have to understand there's a complex area of international law. Miss Tate, allow me to finish, please. In international aviation law, there is something called a design state where an aircraft is designed and manufactured, and all of the specifications for that aircraft come from that particular country. Our Civil Aviation Authority, not being the design state or not being within the design state for the Boeing 737-8 MAX, is in no position to determine the airworthiness of the MAX 8 or not. That is for the design state to do. So it was the Federal Aviation Administration that determined a temporary prohibition order, and our Civil Aviation Authority then exercised its legal authority and issued the prohibition order.
Other countries did not wait on that argument that you just put forward about the design state taking action. Other countries didn't do that. Why did we? And why wasn't the civil aviation questioned by you and people who we put into office? That's when I say that it's electorate. Because it is life and death, as you just said. Why were they not questioned? Why weren't they asked, well, how come other countries aren't waiting on this design state argument? Why are we as the only ones sitting waiting until everybody else does it, and then we are the last?
Everybody else? The Federal Aviation Administration, Ms. Tate, let's deal with facts, not fiction. The Federal Aviation, this is a fact that I'm about to say. What I am saying is a fact. The Federal Aviation Administration at 6:10 p.m. on Tuesday, the 12th of March, 2019, issued a bulletin indicating they were satisfied that the Boeing 737-8 MAX was safe. I can't believe that you are expecting me to say that the Federal Aviation Administration of the United States of America does not know what it's talking about. And this is the point I'm making. This is a matter for professionals. This is not a matter for persons who are not versed in civil aviation.
So you can understand the confusion then, because you were the primary spokesperson for the government and by extension the Civil Aviation Authority. Is this an issue then again with communications and the communications of the government and explaining to the people of Trinidad and Tobago what is happening? Why didn't the CAA make this statement? Why did Mr. Imbert have to be the one to make this statement to the public via tweet?
I have seen several statements by the Civil Aviation Authority. As a matter of fact, it was posted on their website.
Precisely.
Immediately after they took the decision. So the problem we have in this country is that the media just wants to hear it from the politician.
Exactly.
If you follow the professionals, you'd see that it was posted by the Civil Aviation immediately on taking a decision. And I have heard even last night on the news, on a couple of the stations, the Director General from the Civil Aviation having interviews with members of the media. Unfortunately, in this country, if you don't hear it from a politician's mouth, it doesn't make the news.
I think that you were a bit harsh in your response, your responses on this issue, because you have...
Is it me you're talking to?
Yes.
Oh, certainly. No, I would just like to... Can we excuse Minister Sinana?
Yes, we could.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Were you not... People were concerned, whether you like it or not. People were concerned about, one, the fact that there were airlines in our airspace using this aircraft, and two, that CAL had put in an order for the very same aircraft. And your response by way of release, you talk about the civil aviation has been talking, but the politicians responded And your response was quite...
The state, I think I got the question, you know. All right. It is my duty as corporation sole, and I'm sure you read my last press release I sent out before Cabinet. I'm sure you read it. But I'll repeat it for those who are not aware of it. It is my duty as Minister of Finance, as the line minister for Caribbean Airlines, and corporation sole as the holder of the shares on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago in all state enterprises, to protect state enterprises from fake news. The story, Ms. Tate, I didn't interrupt you. Please don't interrupt me. The story that the Express published led to a belief that Caribbean Airlines was flying defective planes and that persons traveling on Caribbean Airlines were at risk. It was extremely dangerous and damaging to the reputation of our national airline. My actions, Ms. Tate, were to protect the integrity and the reputation of our national airline, and I will continue to do that. Anytime, Ms. Tate, I see a state enterprise, especially our national airline, coming under threat from fake news, I will certainly perform my duty without fear or favor.
With all due respect, that is totally inaccurate. We never said that
All right.
Carl was flying those aircraft.
Thank you
we
very
never
much,
said that.
Ms. Tate. Okay, can I ask, are there any other questions you all like addressed?
I would like to ask if there are legal implications to Carl switching.
You would have heard, Ms. Tate, you would have heard the Honorable Acting Prime Minister say a short while ago what he has asked Carl to do is to seek legal advice. So right now we're not in a position to give any definitive interpretation of the legal contracts. We've asked them, and he said to get the best lawyers in the world to take a look at it. But I can tell you as a lawyer, I would be very surprised if there are issues with aircraft. You can't be locked into a contract that you have to take the aircraft, because there's always an implied condition there that they're fit for purpose. So I think let's wait and let's see how this thing unfolds.
No, hold on, Ms. Tate. Let me come in here now. I got a report from the chairman of Caribbean Airlines last night, because we're not sleeping. I am protecting that national airline every hour of the day. So, yes, we are always on the ball. So I spoke to the chairman of Caribbean Airlines last night, and he said, as at a first read of the lease contract, it speaks to certification and airworthiness being conditions precedent to the acceptance of the aircraft. So that the preliminary view is that the aircraft cannot be delivered unless they are certified and declared to be airworthy by the relevant authorities. But we're not playing this thing by guess. I'm not advising myself. I learned a long time ago that's not a good thing to do. So we are going to get the best aviation lawyers in the world to look at these contracts to determine what are our rights and what are our options and how we can protect ourselves from any loss of revenue. And certainly I can give you an assurance, Caribbean Airlines will not be flying any aircraft that is deemed to be not airworthy by any regulatory authority. I can give you that assurance.
Has any down payment been made?
Yes, a down payment was made. But the down payment is part of an agreement based on the successful completion of the delivery of the aircraft that would have been certified and deemed to be airworthy. So that is something that the airline has been authorized by me to look at as well. In the event, and I mean this is just speculation, because we don't know what would happen. Right. A month from now, the FAA may say they have thoroughly investigated the aircraft and it's perfectly safe, or not, as the case may be. But in the event, we're thinking ahead, I've asked Caribbean Airlines to look at the worst case scenario. In the event that we cannot accept these planes, certainly we would have to try and recover, seek to recover the down payment that was made. So that's two instructions I've given to them. See how we can, it's $7 million US. See that we can recover the down payment made, and in the event that the aircraft is deemed to be not airworthy, and also see whether we can get replacement planes if that is necessary. But we are completely in the realm of speculation right now. But I want to make the point, the government is looking after its citizens and looking after the safety of its people and taxpayers' money.
I'm just wondering, Minister, could you also, in case you had before and I didn't know about it, the overall figure, the cost of that order for the 12?
I'm afraid not, but I can certainly get that. That is not a secret.
Correct. And there are Caribbean Airlines that had a big grand splash, a launch
yeah.
at the Hyatt, if I remember correctly, and they've done a
Correct.
rollout of all of that.
I can get that. That's not a secret.
Any other questions?
Was that announcement by Caribbean Airlines, did that occur before or after the crash in Indonesia of the MAX 8? I'm trying to recall that the timeline.
It was implied. It was
I don't have that in.
in November.
And the reason why I ask, obviously, is that there would be the question of whether or not enough due diligence was done. If, in fact, this had occurred after
I think the
first
best
crash.
test of that, Jule, is actually that post the Lion Air crash in October, these planes have continued to fly throughout the world. As you would have seen, you call China. China Air is one of the largest purchasers of these planes. So these planes have continued to fly. CAL has none of these MAX 8 planes. So the focus really shouldn't be, in my humble opinion, on CAL. We've seen airlines with fleets of these planes continue to fly until this unfortunate incident over the weekend, which then raised questions. Well, hold on, is it a coincidence? Why two in such a short time frame? And one of the last countries to declare, to ground, first of all, because they can, being the designating, the design state, and then also to take a decision to prohibit from flying in the airspace, was the United States, where Boeing is based. They're the ones presumably have the most information. So don't make it a Trinidad issue. Correct. Well, it's not a Trinidad issue. It's not a CAL issue. Unfortunately, these planes now, it appears, they're being looked at, but they continue to fly. The fleets continue to fly all over the world. I can tell you, the American Airlines flight that came in from Miami on Tuesday, because I went to collect people from that flight, that was a MAX 8 flight. So up to Tuesday, the Americans were still allowing these planes to fly, etc. And as this thing develops, let's wait and see. I'm sure they're working overtime to figure out what, if any, issues there are, etc. Any other questions?
I just had something kind of ongoing thing. You know, the Venezuelan crisis, and I wanted to check on the plans for the economic migrants who are here. I kind of had a fear of a distortion of the labour market. You know, you have workers, Trinidadians may be working for $2.50 a day minimum wage, and then you may have people being exploited for $80 a day. Is there any, because you had sort of given...
When you say you mean $250?
Yeah, you might have like a labourer, unskilled labourer. So I wondered, you know, I mean, you're in a very tight position because...
No, not at all. As I've explained to you all, and the note will be coming to Cabinet next week, we are going to deal with this, first of all, on a registration basis. There is going to be some conversation about, as you call it, the distortion of the labour market, etc. Quite frankly, we deal with that as it comes. As I said before, these jobs, and one of the reasons we want to do registration and to ensure that Venezuelans who are registered can work, is to deal exactly with the exploitation, because now they'll be covered. They don't have to be fearful that they're not covered and they're not here lawfully and legally, which is one of the ways how people exploit them. They say, look, you're not here lawfully, you're not here legally, I'm going to call the authorities for you unless you do this. Or they're hiding because they want to do things under the table. The registration process will deal with that, and it's an open market. It continues to be speculation, because at this stage we do not have an accurate figure. And that's what I want to deal with, an accurate figure of how many Venezuelans are really here. There continue to be jobs. You look every day in the newspaper, you look every day on the internet, etc. There are jobs available. There are workplaces that are calling out for labour. As the number of government projects start to increase, you've heard the Minister of Housing here talk today about a massive project we're going to do in East Port of Spain. There's going to be an increase in the need for labour in the market. Just to correct something that I was just...
Okay. Just to correct something, because I don't like to give information unless I have the facts. The Lion Air crash took place on the 29th of October, 2018, and Caribbean Airlines' launch of its plan to lease the MAX 8 took place on the 20th of November, 2018. Okay? All right.
Mr. Dillon, the cost of this Piccadilly project, do you have a cost? No cost.
And in terms of...
The Unicode is really modified.
Excuse me, your microphone, please.
It is design concept right now, so we don't have a cost as yet.
And in terms of request for proposals and so on, that how soon will that get going?
Well, as I said, what is happening now, phase one is in terms of the demolition, starting with the Besson Street, old Besson Street police station. So the UDCAT is the executing agency, and they're pursuing that in terms of the design and so on right now.
Mr. Young, the forensic pathologist at the forensic center, has he been confirmed in his position? I think it was said that he was temporary.
No, what he was offered is a 3-year contract. He accepted the 3-year contract. He's been working, so as you all would have realized, there have not been any issues. Presumably the backlog has been cleared. Again, I use the opportunity to apologize to those families that would have been affected during that period of time. I had a conversation with the Attorney General today, along with the Acting Prime Minister, for us to move forward with dealing with the UNDP recruitment exercise and for them to help us find more people. And that is proceeding full speed ahead because I've asked the Permanent Secretary at National Security to put it as a priority item because I don't want this reoccurring.
Just an outstanding issue. Soldiers who went to Dominica in the aftermath of the Hurricane Maria are yet to receive their stipends. They're becoming impatient. What can you say to them?
Well, you have raised this with me before. As soon as you raise it with me, so what, for those who may not have heard you, what the issue I found out to be is that how it happened and how quickly that when the hurricanes hit and we took a decision at the time to send our Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard and other Defence Force personnel up to Dominica. They went, and what they're looking for is their stipends for being out of country. And that I've asked the Ministry of National Security to deal with it. What it may mean is some sort of cover approval for the period of time. Quite frankly, I don't know why it has taken so long. And now that they're hearing me, hopefully they will prioritize that item as well. But from my perspective, the Defence Force personnel need to be paid what is owed to them for that period of time. And I will make sure that it is done in the shortest possible time frame.
Just a small question. One of our reporters was trying to email you on plans for the Citrus Growers Association land. I don't know if you answered. I don't want to let it.
Well, I don't think he emailed me. We don't have our phones in cabinet. So when I came out of cabinet, I saw a missed call, and I've now seen a text message come through. And the answer to that is I need to look into it. What it is there's a citrus growers, where the citrus growers, there's a citrus growers site in sort of the outskirts of East Port of Spain, opposite the Beetham estate there. And at one stage we were looking, as he had said when Minister Dillon was the Minister of National Security, we were looking at whether it made sense to acquire that site for national security. Right now, as you're aware, we're dealing with a host of other issues, and it was not a priority item. And I'll say quite frankly, right now I don't think it is a priority item, because in prioritizing the spend at national security, I am more interested in locking down our borders. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service are working very well with the Defence Force in and around East Port of Spain and other areas like that. So it is not a priority item right now.
I know we're going a little long. I just want to make a point about Trinidad Petroleum, but I really can't get into details. There was a news report in Reuters about Trinidad Petroleum's efforts at financing. What I would like to say, because these discussions are at a very delicate stage, I don't want to preempt anything, I don't want to upset anything, but from all accounts, Trinidad Petroleum's efforts to refinance its $850 million US bond and also to raise finance for its operations, these discussions are going very well. That's all I would like to say at this point in time. I wouldn't want to get into details because they are in the process of meeting with potential financiers, rating agencies, and so on. But you would have seen from that Reuters report that things are looking up in terms of profitability from the perspective of the international observers. If you read that entire very long story from Reuters, you'd have seen that the general consensus among international observers is that Petrotrin is on its way to profitability.
Clarify what you just said there. You are confirming the accuracy of the report?
I said that the discussions that Trinidad Petroleum is having with potential financiers and rating agencies are going very well. This reminds me of Mr. Watson Duke in a JSC saying you agreed to give an increase. No, I did not say what you just said, Ms. Bridgelal. I simply said the discussions are going well.
Okay. Thank you all very much for your attendance today.
We've come to the end of today's weekly post-cabinet media briefing. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube at TTT Live Online for all of the stories coming out of today's media briefing. I'm Mahalia Joseph Wharton. Have a good afternoon.